Thank you for attending today's webinar on the topic of energy and sustainability ERP for food and beverage. My name is John Hines. I'm the VP of Strategic Accounts here at EnergyCAP. So let's get started. For those that aren't familiar, EnergyCAP for over 40 years has been the #1 trusted energy and sustainability ERP. If you're not familiar with what an ERP system is, it's software, it's enterprise resource planning software. So the idea being you get all of your energy information into the software, and that allows you and your teams to use that data strategically to make improvements within your organization. Our software is used by over 10,000 energy and sustainability users. There's over $17 billion worth of vendor utility bills tracked annually. And one of the main value drivers of using EnergyCAP ERP is to drive savings. And savings can come in the form of cost. It can come in the form of carbon emissions reductions and net zero activities and use reduction. We've documented over $500 million annually of at least dollar savings and many, many more savings for carbon emissions reductions and usage reduction. The main idea with the platform is get your energy and sustainability data in and get value out. And value comes in a lot of different shapes and sizes depending on what your job function is. But the idea is to help you better manage your consumption, reduce your carbon emission, and to drive cost savings, all of which are really important when it comes to getting your arms around your energy and utility data. The platform is really the single source of truth for all of your information. Now, we've been in the business for over 40 years, and the most common thing that we hear among different clients and prospects is that we have data in Excel and we have data in this system and in that system. You obviously will have a financial system where you're posting bills and making payments. So with all of these disparate systems, it becomes a problem to say, where is the single source that I can go to do all of my reporting? That is what we are talking about here. A ERP system that's the single source of truth, that is financial grade, that is easily reportable, and you can share data on your journey to reduce carbon footprint and reach your net zero goals. The framework of our ERP system involves 3 main components. So there's the component of Carbon Hub, which is tracking greenhouse gas emissions information. So you get consumption data from utilities for scope 1 and 2 emissions, and you can track your scope 1 and 2 emissions from that information. Additionally, you can track whatever scope 3 emissions you need to, purchases, generation activities, waste, fleet and transportation activities. It's meant to be the single source of truth for all of that information to help you with ESG reporting and be the foundation for your reporting on your journey to net zero. And then we get to EnergyCAP. So EnergyCAP utility bill management is the focus of the EnergyCAP platform. This would be getting your arms around your monthly utility bills that are coming in from utility providers and allowing you to get auditing and holistic views of your utility bills that they then become the foundation to other types of reporting like carbon emission reporting and budgeting and other accounting function and energy management. And then there's Wadix. Wadix is a real-time energy analytics platform that is tracking predominantly interval data. So if you have production lines, if you have just even whole building interval data, and you have sensors or hardware or meters on any type of your equipment, your production lines, your buildings, that data can be brought into the system, and you can get a lot of value out of that data, which is real actionable in real time. So you can take action so it, any spikes or anomalies don't show up later on your utility bills. So working in this framework, the ERP software allows you to track and manage all of this data and provide these functions all under one software. On top of this as well is a service that is called Capture Services. This does all the legwork for you on your behalf to get utility bills or smart meter interval data from utility companies and bring that data into the platform to allow you to do analytics and to automate processes and streamline workflow of just bill entry and mundane, data collection and entry into the system. So that is a bolt-on service on top of the software, because the software is heavily reliant on data. And so we don't want you to manually collect data and manually crunch it. You can do that if you would like, but services help you in that journey. Specifically for food and beverage, we've seen just a lot of different areas where food and beverage can use our ERP platform to help drive savings. First one is in cost optimization. Allows you to dive deep into production efficiency and track your production lines. So, allow you to allocate use and cost to the production, your production lines, and allow you to do things like track use per widget produced or cost per widget produced. Looking at hours of operation and saying potentially when are the best times to run production lines that you would have the lowest cost options based on rates and some other criteria. So getting exposure to what you're using and spending from a utility standpoint and seeing how your production lines are operating is really helpful to then help you optimize to make sure that you're running processes at the right time. Next is energy efficiency. So the ability to quickly detect equipment and issues within your buildings or within your production lines, to pinpoint energy hogs, and to calculate potential savings. So this is helping you be more energy efficient and also detecting problems before they show up later on monthly bills or in other areas. And last is GHG accounting. We know this is a growing area of emphasis for a lot of organizations we're working with. So the easy ability to track in real time, in some cases, your GHG emissions output as you're consuming energy in real time. For a lot of clients, it's just monthly or annual reporting, but you can report on your data. You can also report to your customers if they need that data as well. So some tools that allow you to generate the GHG emissions for any production that you're doing that you can report to customers. And an example of that, we have a customer that's a water bottler, and what they do is some of the larger retailers white label their bottles, and they need to provide GHG reporting of what it takes to produce a bottle of water to some of those retailers. So those are the types of activities that you can also track in addition to your carbon emissions. And we give you two examples of just some clients and case studies that we've put together over the years that show, how the platform can help. So Clonner and Clover, they're a company in Ireland. They've used the real-time capabilities of our platform to analyze consumption patterns and detect excessive usage during off-peak periods. So basically, when they're not really operating, what is their usage? And they said, well, we're kind of wasting energy here when we're not even running our production lines. So they were able to spot that using the real-time analytics. Some of these things you can't spot on a utility bill. So helpful to have the bill, but also helpful to have the interval data to then see what production lines, what pieces of equipment, what building control settings and temperature settings and things like that are driving excessive usage during off-peak periods when you're not producing and the plant could be shut down more. So they were able to pinpoint areas and saw a 10% reduction in equipment energy consumption, and we're able to get immediate cost savings to help pay for the system and pay for meters and things like that, because now that they're operating more efficiently, their utility, their then utility bill is lower and they're able to save. And so really helpful both in reducing consumption, reducing cost, also though helping on their path to get towards net zero and advancing their sustainability goals. And another client, food processing company, they also were looking for clear visibility into energy consumption and use patterns. We're able to spot 61% energy reduction in just refrigerator condenser fans. So in some cases, the other case, it was just a matter of off-peak hours. And in this case, it's actually looking at a very specific piece of equipment and able to, pinpoint some inefficiencies with it. And by having that increased visibility, being able to reduce and then, save on the back end. So really helpful to have exposure to the data, which is, the main goal here is let's get exposure to data, then you can take action and be able to reduce both consumption and cost, and hopefully CO2 emissions in the process. Okay, so let's dive into the application. I will now launch the software and let's take a look. Okay. Where I'm starting today is we're going to start with the real-time tracking of equipment and buildings. Okay. I recognize that some of you might not have access to the 15-minute, 30-minute, even 5-minute pulse data. I will recommend this. It's really helpful to have that. There are ways to connect to existing BAS or metering systems that the system can ingest the data. We can also recommend hardware if you don't have any. Generally, the investment in some hardware to monitor real important pieces of equipment or even the building as a whole, so you just get some more granularity of what's going on month to month, it really pays for itself back pretty quickly. All it takes is to change some building scheduling times, and you can get some savings really, really quickly, let alone some more long-term savings with demand reduction and some other reduction in other areas. But let's first start with the granular data. So if you want to track your data, in real time as your production lines are working and your buildings are operating. So what we have here is an example of an organic farm, and they have a few different areas that are metered. Okay, so they're metering a gas main, water main, and then a few major areas within the building and capturing electric data. The other thing they're tracking that I won't spend a lot of time on is indoor air quality. So if indoor air quality is of vital importance to you, you can track those metrics if you have the sensors to bring in, some of those variables. So the system can track, not only consumption and demand, but also some of those other variables as well. And it can track lines of, your production data, which we see here, and other bits of data. Really helpful to have some of those so that you can start to correlate with your building operations. Okay, so let's stick with this HVAC example. So what the system is doing is bringing in data in near real time. So it would be, this is all 5-minute interval data. So we're looking at what the daily profiles look like each day. This data is flowing in, from the metering system in this case, and coming in real time. Okay, and all of these reads are 5-minute data. So the system helps you profile data. This is actually every one of these components, like the chiller and the air handler units, everything's being monitored. And then we can easily roll that data up to see, say, what's the HVAC doing in this production facility in real time. So here we're seeing what the trends are. We can see, generally the HVAC is operating pretty consistently. You have some spikes in the afternoon, and then, kind of starting to get to be set back for the evening. So this is, just giving you a real nice profile of what's going on. And then if you have the subcomponents metered, you can drill into those, each one, and just see what's going on, in each one of these as the day plays out. Okay. And we can see, by the way, the HVAC, a lot of the in this case, demand was driven by the air compressor, it seems. That's why we had, that spike in the afternoon. So really helpful to start to pinpoint what component of a piece of equipment or a production line, is really driving some of the consumption demand patterns. So for any one of these points, you can track demand, you can track other factors, power quality factors, voltage, current, usage, any of those things. The system lets you look at, different bits of data. So if I wanted to look at monthly data in total, I can click on the monthly filter, and now I'm looking at monthly data. And, again, real helpful to look at different snapshots in time. I can see, the days that we're operating in full capacity and then days that we're having setback. Well, if your operations are closed over the weekends, you'd want to see something like this, where systems are shut down. HVAC is not operating over the weekends, but is during the weekdays when you're, staffed and operating, full business day. So really helpful to look at the trends and potentially spot problems. Now, how does the system spot problems? So great that you can view the data, but the system will highlight problems for you. So there's an alarming system that can detect if a meter's offline. You can set up your own custom detection. So as meter data is coming in, you could say, well, if usage or demand hits a certain threshold, send a text or an email and alert an operator to go look into it. So let's say, getting back to that weekend example I was just showing, let's say your building system started to turn on a Saturday morning at 9 in the morning. Well, you would not want your systems operating at full capacity on a Saturday if you're supposed to be shut down. So you can automatically have the system send whoever you want text messages and say, hey, wait a minute, the building systems are turning on a weekend. We're supposed to be shut down. Really, really helpful in that case. So then you can hopefully then go into your control systems and dial things back, because if you were operating, full capacity with no one there, you're just completely wasting energy. And it could potentially be a hot day and you might have a demand spike when no one's even in the building. So those types of alarms are really, really helpful for various purposes. Okay, the weekend is just one example, but you might want to monitor demand and do demand management, so you don't have spikes on your bill. You can set thresholds for demand and other things. So really helpful to get alerts as the data is coming in. Another type of capability that the system provides is a view that's called Sentinel. And Sentinel is just leveraging machine learning capabilities to say, like for this chiller, what is a expected profile based on historical usage and impacts of weather and some other factors? What is expected? What is the expected behavior of a piece of machinery or a zone in a building or a production line? So the green is what's expected and the black is the actual. So for every one of these points, it's creating this profile. And you can see here, the boiler kind of didn't turn on when it normally does. That might not be a problem in this case. You're going, okay, that's okay. But let's say it turned on, too early or never turned on. That then can become a problem, and you would have equipment issues. And so the system can use this profile and alert you if any of your readings go above or below the expected value. So really helpful to, show what is a reasonable profile for every point, and then alert you if it falls outside of that. There's a lot of other capabilities in the system that allows you to look at all your data, analyze it a lot of different ways. So you can pick whatever time periods you want. You can overlay data one on top of the other, and dissect your data to make sure that you're analyzing it the way that you feel you need to. Really nice capabilities, point and click, and you get visualizations and analytics for whatever you want to look at. Whenever you build these analytics, you can save them to a dashboard. And that becomes a really nice way for you to save these views that are important to you. You can, the system creates a URL, a public link that you can share with stakeholders. And when they click the link, they get access to your dashboards, but they don't even need login to the system. So you can put this in a kiosk, you could share this on a website, or you could just IM it to a team member and they can view it and look at the data. One of the other really nice capabilities in the system is a formula composer. So really helpful for food and beverage and manufacturing in general is it allows you to say, well, I have this HVAC, I have HVAC in my building, and now I want to see how does production impact my HVAC usage? So let me build out a correlation to see, like, does it exist? And then if so, how much? So out of how many units of production does it impact a kilowatt hour of usage for HVAC? So this formula composer lets you run those types of regression analysis. So here what we're saying is we have HVAC, so my kilowatt hours, and then my production data, widgets produced. And we basically are saying there's a pretty strong correlation that as I produce, I'm also consuming. So we can establish there is a definitive correlation and exactly what that correlation is. And then you can save these points if you want to. And I could say, I always want to look at my use per production. It's a very important metric for me. So we can save that unit of measure, that this is a virtual point, and you can come back to it. And this will even create a sentinel view, a reasonable view of what's expected at all times. So very powerful to keep, allow you to keep a pulse on some of those units of measure. Two other things I'll point out in the real-time application is optimization. I talked about that earlier. So the ability to optimize and run some what-if scenarios to help you save. So there is a heat map capability in the system that when you get down to any one of your points, what this does is it gives you a nice view of a monthly view. Let me go to, I'm going to go to, let's say last month, so May 2023. So this would be a total month's view of your data. And what we're looking at very specifically here is a point that we're monitoring, in this case, the chiller. And we can see that the lighter shades are low consumption usage and the darker shades are high consumption, and every row is a day in the month. So this is helping me understand what my general profile looks like for every month. And I can go back in time and look at any month and look at the profile. Now, I might look at this and say, well, wait a minute, how come on the weekdays I'm not getting deeper setback like in the evening hours? So maybe my HVAC is not rolling back deep enough, and I'm really wasting some energy in the evening hours during the weekday. So maybe I want to see if I can do a deeper setback at night. What would I save? So that's, I'm trying to optimize. So I can come in here and say, well, maybe in the evening hours, I want to reduce my consumption by, let's just call it 50%. What would I save if I could do that? And so now it changed the heat map and it's told me, well, I can save 7% of usage and the system can apply cost. And it's now saying, well, this month I would have saved 828 euros. And the system can track any currency. In this case, this building is in Europe, so it's tracking euros, but it can track any currency, wherever the building's located. So I'm estimating 828 euros that I would save if I could make that change. So really nice to be able to optimize and make some projections for usage and cost savings. And then the last thing I'll mention, if you are implementing any projects, so let's say in this building, we want to change a speed drive, in a potato chip or a manufacturing production line, you can identify what that project is. You can establish what the base period is and what your reporting period is. And then you can make adjustments to the equation. So do you want to track production? Do you want to track heating and cooling degree days? Like, what do you need to bring into the model? And then it creates a model and says, well, based on, the impact of heating and cooling degree days and your production, here would be your typical consumption pattern. And then we can compare our savings or reporting period versus your base period and get your payback. So in this case, it's saying, well, after we kind of make some adjustments for heating degree days and production and things, we would have a payback period for this project of almost a year and a half, and the savings per year would be 11,000, again, euros, but could be US dollars or whatever currency you need. So really nice capabilities to track savings after you've implemented projects. So everything that I just talked about was tracking interval data, real-time data. So the next question is, well, how do you track utility bills and how do you track carbon? Very good question there. So part of the extension of the ERP platform is tracking monthly bill data. So there's the ability to track however your organization is structured. In this example, it's divisions and then regions and then plants or buildings themselves. And then you get to the commodities that you would be getting billed for. You could be metering these, but in a lot of cases, these are bills. So you can bring in utility bills, either import them, hand key them, or have us receive the bills on your behalf and enter them into the system. So here's a ledger of all of the bills for this electric meter tied to this plant. And you could drill into a utility bill and look at all the line items and track whatever line items you're getting billed for. That way you can do reporting on late fees or taxes and usage and demand charges and time of use charges and whatever it is. So you can track any line item on a bill, and then the system will roll up that data into billing period data, calendarize, and even weather normalize the data. So when you compare year to year, you can throw out weather as a factor. So you'll notice a theme with the entire ERP framework is we're always looking at weather data and doing our best to weather normalize. So when you compare year to year, you're adjusting for weather and throwing out any vulnerabilities in weather year to year. So with that utility bill data, we can easily see year to year comparisons. You can look at trends. So this would be cost, use, and unit cost trends, and easily identify abnormal amounts on bills. Now, I can visually see that something's going on here on the unit cost and cost side. There's an auditing system built in that would have flagged this bill. So if I go back to the bills, July, the July bill would have a flag on it, saying that we had a problem. And notice here, like, we have no values. So there is an auditing system, and these flags get posted to a bill so you can follow any types of problems. But there are all of these, visualizations and trends that you can drill into that present the data a lot of different ways. Okay. So really easy to visualize data, report on it. It's also very easy to roll up data. So I could go to the regional level and roll up data very easily. So I can report to the regional manager, here's your data. Most of it's going to electricity. Here's the other commodities that that are being tracked, and what your cost spend is, or drill into each commodity rolled up automatically, at any level. Constantly, the system's constantly rolling up data, providing comparisons this year versus last year, this month versus last month, and putting that right in front of you. The system connects to Energy Star. So for any of you that need to report and get your data into Energy Star, there's an automated interface that allows you to connect to your portfolio manager account, and then you just manage the data in this platform, and then automatically can submit, and then it will return your ratings if it's a rateable building. So we know there's growing legislation requiring Energy Star submittals. This allows you to press the easy button. So you manage this. You don't also have to manage Energy Star. It'll post the data, and then you're in compliance. You can track energy management projects. You can track savings due to projects. And as you're implementing, similar to what I was showing earlier with the interval data, you can do the same types of analysis and track savings, comparing to a base year from your bill data. Some other capabilities, you have all these buildings, plants, whatever it is, like that's fantastic, right? And you can get all these summaries of data. But what about comparing against one another? There's a benchmarking tool that lets you create groups of buildings. So you can create them on whatever criteria you want. It could be size, it could be warehouses. In this case, I'm saying all the buildings, plants that are labeled as manufacturing. Let's put them into a peer group and do some analysis. So the system can rank on a cost per area basis. Maybe you want it on a use per area, and I can normalize this. So what that means is this is showing my EUI, my energy use intensity, which is normalized use per area. So I can see plant 2 is the outlier here. The other thing that you can do is track other variables like production or like hours of operation. And maybe I want to look at my use per production widget. So this is showing my MMBTU per production widget for each plant. And I can see that kind of the most inefficient plant from a use per widget produced is plant 5. And maybe I want to drill into plant 5 and see how we can be more efficient there. So really nice tools to benchmark your data, spot anomalies, but benchmark in a lot of different ways. It's not just versus, say use and cost and demand. It's looking at those variables also with production or hours of operation or occupancy or other metrics that you need to capture and compare against. There's very nice reporting capabilities that lets you, there's a library of reports. It lets you, any one of these, set filters. What do you want to report on? Maybe you, want to report some normalized, key summary data to stakeholders, and you want to use your manufacturing group. You want to send out a report for all of the data rolled up for all your manufacturing buildings. So you can set filters for these reports, and then these reports export to PDF, Word, and Excel, and then you can execute the report. Now, there's an email distribution engine built onto this. So while it's great to run reports manually, you can also set up distribution lists and auto email these reports to your stakeholders. So really nice, like if this is a important report, say for a region or a division, I could schedule this to run to those stakeholders, on the first of every month, and it'll automatically do it. So I don't have to set up a task to remind myself to go in and run the report. So a lot of ways to push out data to stakeholders. On the carbon reporting side, so hopefully you're understanding with this platform, a lot of different ways to track and report on use and cost, and when you get down to electric meters on demand. There's also the ability to track your carbon footprint. So if I go to Carbon Hub, what we're showing here, and if I go to a higher level, we are reporting in this case, scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions for any building, any division, any organization level that you're tracking. So here we're showing total CO2 emissions. You can set targets and see how you're trending to your targets. And then of that, the total CO2, how much is broken out, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, how are each of these emissions being compared this year versus prior year, which buildings are the worst emitters, which scope categories the worst, so on and so forth. And how we accomplish this is at every commodity level or resource level, you have the ability to set whatever GHG factor you need to. Now, we provide a library of EPA factors and international factors that you can select from. So we have them from all over the world. If you need to localize even more, you can set your own factors. So you can enter those. So for every resource or commodity, you define what scope category it is, what GHG factor you want to use, whether out of the box or custom, and then those factors get applied and you can report CO2 at any level you need to. Now for scope 3 items, you can track offsets. So if you have any offsets or you're doing any purchases and RECs, you can track these as a negative. So as you purchase RECs, those get applied as a negative and get totalized in your carbon reporting. So you can track those as well in the system. And you can also track whatever type of scope 3 emissions you have, whether it's business travel or it's employee commuting or it's purchases of goods and services. Those can all be tracked either on a daily, monthly, annual basis, and then applied to your total carbon footprint. So some really nice capabilities that allow you to keep a pulse on your CO2 emissions and help you track how you're trending towards your targets and your net zero activities. Last thing I'll mention is about dashboarding. So there's dashboarding capabilities where you can set up however many dashboards you want. You can define what widgets you want and how you want to set filters for widgets. There's also mapping dashboards. So you can set, all of your buildings as you're tracking the addresses, they can be put on a map. And then there's heat mapping. So the ability to show and scale a circle around the most intense buildings from a EUI, a cost, or even a GHG, emission output standpoint. So a lot of ways to visualize and customize your data. You can then share your dashboards with others. So I can make this, create a URL, and similar to what I was showing with the real-time capabilities, you can share these maps and other dashboards with stakeholders and embed in websites. Telling your story is important. So the ability to get the data out through reports and dashboards and maps and other tools are really important to allow you to communicate progress and show stakeholders how you're performing. That is the end of the presentation today. I hope you learned a lot. We would be very excited to engage with you and talk more about how our energy and sustainability ERP can help your very specific organization. Please engage with our sales team. Email us at sales@energycap.com. You can also contact me personally if you want. My email is john.hines@energycap.com. We are happy to engage and talk about your needs and your challenges and to put a solution in front of you. Thanks for attending. Hope you learned a lot and hope you, and I wish you well in your path to net zero. Thank you very much.